are back with another episode of Different Strings, a guitar adjacent podcast. Uh, why are you laughing already? Did I do something funny?
I wasn't recording when you were first talking.
Oh, where did I start? It doesn't matter. They know who I am. Consider the intro read. I'm your host, Wes, and I'm here with my good friend Andy, who's going to say hello right now.
Hello, Andy.
Thank you. I've been waiting desperately for you to actually do that because to me, that's the joke.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, Claire, the whole world. You got to know the movie for that to make sense. But you you are going to tell everybody how to find us on the internet.
Oh, dear Lord. Well, if you're already watching us and you don't know how to find us, you're the problem.
Truth.
But if you want to see us elsewhere, you can visit us at differentstringspodcast.com. Email us your questions or topic ideas at differentstringspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at Different Strings Podcast, on YouTube, where you might be right now. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, and do all the things. And subscribe to Different Strings Podcast wherever you consume such media. Back to you, Wes.
Fantastic.
Thank
So
you.
we got a special treat for you tonight. We're calling it Reddit Hot Takes with Wes and Andy. And here's a special thing. Okay, I'll let you in. I'm gonna pull the curtain aside just a little bit
Okay.
for the average listener slash viewer. Typically, when we come up with a topic, we talk about it a little bit. We each do our own individual research and we share a Google Doc with our notes so that we can see more or less what each other's thinking. Now, I'm going to tell you, Andy does not make a lot of notes. A couple of bullet points and maybe a reference. Whereas I tend to write a paragraph and I more or less read the paragraph because I don't always think sharp when I'm on my feet and have to come up with something right in the heat of the discussion. So tonight, for hot takes on Reddit topics, we are throwing all of that out. And Andy made an outline. I have not even looked at it. I don't even know what questions, issues, and hilarity is coming up. I'm coming in completely cold. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at a blank web page that shows me a picture of a gopher and tells me the time. That's how disconnected I am from what's about to happen until it starts happening. And I'm only keeping a web page up in front of me so that I can find a picture of something if I need to
Yeah.
speak more accurately to it. So
And the
let's
typically
get
the
into it.
yeah, typically the format for these episodes is I read the questions to you, and you are the one responding and providing you're providing the initial reaction.
Right.
So that the reason I don't let you look at these is because I want that raw response. I
Raw.
want I right like the one I had when I read these for the first time.
It's the podcast, it's the different strings equivalent of a reaction video.
Right. Now, I decided to take things a step further this time. So the last time
Oh
we did
no.
this, the last time we did this, I just went to the R guitar subreddit,
Okay.
r/guitar, and I pulled down questions that I thought would be fun, entertaining, and honestly, some that I thought, quite frankly, that we could provide insightful answers to. Um, this
Not so
time,
much this time.
this time, like manna from heaven, when I pulled up r/guitar, pinned at the top, just waiting for me to find it, was the no stupid questions spring 2024 thread. And
Oh no.
I'm gonna test that tonight to see.
Oh,
Um, no stupid questions.
well, I'm gonna go on record as saying right now
Mhm.
that is completely inaccurate. There are absolutely stupid questions.
What
Yet
they
to be
always
determined
say,
if we're about to. They
they
always say
always-
that, but they're wrong. They're wrong,
no
Andy.
such
There
thing
are
as a,
stupid questions. Yes, there are. There are stupid questions.
there are stupid questions.
Yeah. And most of
Um,
us can identify them right off.
right off. Yeah. And so this might be one of them. Sorry if you're listening, the person who asked this question. Um, out of the gate, number one,
Number one,
uh,
here we go.
here we go. My understanding of guitarists versus bassists is that guitarists will generally play a lot more notes, which means their capacity for it is greater than bass players. This translates to the guitarist being able to play more complicated stuff than the bassist. Furthermore, a guitarist can pick up a bass and play many complex bass lines than a bassist can play complex guitar lines or even those same bass lines. Are guitarists just better in this way?
Well, first of all, I have two words that will put this who's better thing immediately to rest, and then everything else after that is details. And those two words are John Myung, right? The bass player from Dream Theater, who, if you have ever seen him play, uh, if I was a bass player and I watched him play, it would be, to me, it's like watching Steve Morse. It's just like, okay, I'm done. I can't do that. So why should I try to do anything at all?
Why keep going?
Why keep going? But um I I I think here's my take on it. It's easier to play the guitar shittily than it is to play the bass shitty. You have to, if you can count to four, right? Quarter notes, you can do a pretty good bass line for almost any song. You learn a few notes, you follow the beat, you follow the drums, you do pretty good. It is not terribly difficult for people to think you are a great bass player. Now,
Mm,
being a great bass player does take more than playing three notes and quarter notes. It is so easy for people to look at you playing a guitar and think you suck.
okay.
But that doesn't make you, being a good guitar player doesn't make you a better musician than a bass player.
Well, I mean, the question is, are guitarists just better in this way? Meaning guitarists play more notes than bass players, and we play more complicated stuff than bass players. So are we just better?
No, no.
Hmm. Okay.
And I would say that no, we don't play more complicated things than bass players. What I think maybe what the person is driving at is perhaps soloing.
Okay.
And let's be honest, Andy, does anybody really want to listen to an extended bass solo?
Um,
Right.
no.
But when you think about it, a normal, regular person doesn't really want to listen to an extended guitar solo either,
No.
right? Unless you're Eddie Van Halen, rest in peace. It's not interesting.
Mm-mm.
So I think there's a perception that guitar players are better than bass players, but it is a misperception because you need both of them. And if one of them sucks, the whole thing stinks.
Yeah. I think the question is not founded in facts.
It's got a built-in bias.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And that's why I included it. I just felt like, you know,
It feels like a myth. It's like one of those myths. Guitar players are better than bass players, or bass players are failed guitar players.
that's a
That's
common
another,
one.
that's a common one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I did some recording, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, and for a friend of mine, and he had a bass player lined up, and the guy had some problems at the last minute and couldn't make it to the session. So I played bass for the session because he had studio time booked and we just needed to get it done. So he and I both played guitar, and then I went back and overdubbed the bass.
Mhm.
Several weeks later, he had another session to do his overdubs and things like that. And his buddy, the bass player, was able to make it to that. And he had enough time to play 2 songs. Now
Mhm.
you listen to the guy's album, and all of the songs have solid bass because I'm not saying I'm great, but I do know what I'm doing. But the songs that the actual bass player played on are way more interesting
Mhm.
because I'm
Yeah.
not a bass player. I'm a guitar player. I think like a guitar player.
Yeah. Yep. Um, okay. Moving on. Question number two. I am a guitar teacher in a very small town. I am
Do not
essentially
do not sleep with your students. If the question is should I sleep with my students, the answer is no.
the answer is no. I am essentially self-taught by watching YouTube. So let me go back. I am a guitar teacher in a very small town. I am essentially self-taught by watching YouTube. My lessons have been going great for the last year. However, I just encountered a parent who wants their child to learn in a more traditional conservatory manner. In other words, learn actually how to like read and learn theory.
Yeah.
How, how do I do that?
You as a former guitar teacher and as a college professor for a total of about 32 years of experience in teaching in the two. Now teaching college history is nothing at all like teaching guitar and bass in a tiny little stuffy studio crammed into the back of a music store. But here's what you do. You sit down with the parents and you say, listen, I respect that you want your child to learn in this fashion. I'm not the teacher for them. You need to find somebody else. I don't teach in that fashion. I'm not interested in teaching in that fashion. And I'm not the person. I'm not trained like that, so I can't teach like that.
Yeah, I think that is the correct answer.
Yeah. And it sucks for that kid whose parents are want to force him into learning guitar in a way that is not at all conducive to being cool or terribly much fun. Um, and I say that as somebody who used to teach both how to read music and guitar theory. It takes a really special kid, and they got to want to do that a lot
mhm,
because it's not fun and it's not terribly interesting until you've been doing it for a couple of years.
mhm.
And you know, uh, but I get where the guy's coming from. I shouldn't assume that it's a male. Um, I get where the teacher is coming from. For a long time, I was about 2 weeks better than my best student when I was teaching guitar. You
You
know,
were just, they were chomping at the heels.
well, I wasn't. I started when I was 18. I wasn't all that good,
Hmm.
and my boss hooked me up by giving me all the beginners, which was like guitar teacher boot camp.
Hmm.
Um, and I continued to take lessons the whole time I was teaching, and and that's just how it worked out. I mean, I had some students, and there were times where I would tell my students, hey, listen, you've learned everything you can learn from me. I'm happy for you to come in and for us to explore.
Mhm.
And, maybe I can teach you how to play some songs that you're interested in playing because maybe my ear is more developed than yours, but I can't actually teach you anything new. You need another teacher. You need call this guy,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
call this store. They have higher echelon teachers than I am. Now, by the time I'd been teaching for 8 or 10 years, that was no longer the case. I almost never had a student that surpassed me. But in the first couple years, it was not an unusual occurrence for me to send a student to somebody else.
Yeah. And look, like, I think this person is basically saying, when they say, how do I do that? They're really asking, how do I become that kind of teacher?
Yeah,
And
you gotta start over. Go back and study how to read music and learn guitar theory and
yeah,
get real good at it so that you can teach somebody else how to do it.
yeah, there's no fake it till you make it when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think, and because you're taking money from parents,
Oh yeah.
it's, yeah, just don't, you don't want, yeah, I'm with you. I think the right decision is to just say, I'm not the teacher for that child. I
Yeah.
think there's other
Because if you
teachers.
screw it up, especially in a small town, if you screw it up, that word of mouth is going to do a lot of damage to your reputation.
Yeah, can't move away.
Yeah.
All right. Question number three. Three. Um, how do you block a tremolo bridge so that bending does not knock the other strings out of tune?
That's a great technical question. I can tell you how I've done it in several different ways. So, first of all, it depends on the tremolo system. Are you talking about a Floyd Rose, or are you talking about more like a Strat type bridge? Um, if it's something like a Floyd Rose, uh, sell that guitar and buy something else.
No, it's not the answer. They make me like, wait, no,
No, no,
no.
no.
I
I
think,
I don't see the point in blocking a Floyd Rose bridge. So my actual answer, now that I'm not poking fun with a Floyd Rose, you really have to learn how to do you learn have to learn how to bend on a Floyd Rose. You can do it so that when you bend a double stop, the other note doesn't go out of tune, but you got to bend that note too just a little bit. And
well,
it's a complicated technique, but you can do it, or you just live with it. It's part of the charm of using a Floyd Rose.
well, so let's answer the question like this. On a Strat bridge,
Okay.
especially a vintage one, that's easy. You deck
Yeah.
the bridge,
Yeah,
right?
and you can if that doesn't work, then you can even put something hard behind the block under the back of the guitar. I've done it with a piece of wood. I've done it with a Tremel no, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And I have one Strat that has a blocked bridge because I do alternate tunings with it, and I used stacks of nickels.
I was going to say stacks of coins, dimes, nickels, quarters,
Yeah,
pennies. Um,
I
so
call it I call the guitar 18 nickels because that's how many nickels are embedded in it.
yeah, so on a Strat bridge, when I say deck, I mean you tighten the springs in the back of the guitar such that it it overcomes the string tension,
Right.
pulling the bridge back so that the tremolo itself is now sitting on the body of the guitar. With a Strat
Yeah.
vintage tremolo, that works like a charm.
Yeah, you screw the screws on the claw in as far as you can,
Yep.
and then I put 5 springs in just to, keep it
And
real.
honestly, sometimes just putting the act of putting 5 springs in is enough, but not with
Yeah.
you because of your incredibly heavy gauge strings. Okay. But with mortals like me that use eights, putting 5 springs in would be more than enough. Now,
Oh yeah.
on a non-vintage Strat, bridge, and or Floyd's, the question then becomes, do you want only down movement or do you want no movement? So more commonly, it's I want to be able to dive bomb, but I don't want it to go up. In which case, the I used to do what you recommended. I would put coins or a block of wood that was specially made for such a thing in the guitar that would keep the bridge from going back, but it wouldn't keep it from going this way.
Yeah.
You could still dive bomb. But
Yeah,
if
you
you
put it
want to,
on the front side of the block instead of the back side.
exactly. But if you want no movement, then I would say you're going to have to play around with different coins or thicknesses of wood or whatever to block it. But at that point, I would say get a stop tail guitar.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another place where let me see if that's Tremel. No, if that's still what it's called.
Yeah, there's
Um,
actually variations of that sucker now.
yeah, yeah. So there's a thing called a Tremel no, and it's just a little, it replaces the claw in the back of the guitar, and it's got some stops basically,
Yep.
and you can tailor the tension on your Floyd Rose or Floyd Rose style bridge, or you can prevent it from moving at all. So there's a several different ways, and I don't think they're that expensive. Let's see, view products page. Let's see, the basic one is on 97 clicks, $57. That's a little more than I thought it was going to cost, but that's still not crazy expensive.
Yeah. There's now a
Oh,
new version that's cheaper. It's literally like it's a L-shaped clamp and a
yeah,
set
that would do it.
screw. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, 20 bucks.
Here's a funny thing. I followed the Amazon link, and on the page, it's got an orange square with an exclamation point in it that says frequently returned item.
They are, I really don't like them. I really don't like
Yeah,
them.
I was not a fan.
Mm-mm,
It does work as advertised, but
mm-mm.
to me, it completely changes the feel of the motion. So if I was going to use one, I would only use it to completely block, to stop the bridge from moving.
Yep.
I wouldn't use it to just dive down.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of good technical questions, I got another one for you.
Fantastic. I'm excited now.
Yeah. Ready?
Yes.
I'm having a buzz. By the way, this is question 4, if that matters. I'm having a buzz on the B string even when it's open. I adjusted
Huh.
the truss rod first, and when that didn't work, I raised the string
Okay.
height. The buzz is still there. What is causing this buzz?
S-
Could it be an issue with the nut or saddle?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's either the nut or the saddle. So if the nut slot is incorrectly cut, or if maybe it's chipped off a little bit, which can happen, that can cause a buzz. If there's a burr, or maybe the saddle isn't tight against its spring,
Mm-hmm.
that can cause a buzz. So yeah, it's either, if you've done all the other things, and that's what I would do. I would first check the relief on the neck, and then second, raise the action till it doesn't buzz and see where you are. And if even that doesn't work, it's either the nut or the saddle.
Yep.
And if you're not willing to dig into that yourself, you got to go to a technician and pay
Yeah.
somebody.
Sometimes some of these problems become, it's easier just to take it to someone because of the complexity of the but like once I'm done with the truss rod and the string action, and honestly, the string action I wouldn't even mess with because it's like, well, if it's where I want it and all of a sudden I'm getting buzz, something else is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, question 5. And Wes, I am reading this exactly
Verbatim.
as it was posed on
Okay, I'm
the,
ready.
I don't know that you are. I don't know that you are.
In the
Question,
immortal words of Britney Spears, Hit me, baby, one more time.
Wes, why are tube amps heavy? They're just light bulbs.
Well, that's true, but what this person is forgetting is the transformers. You have three transformers. You have a power transformer, which is massive. You have an output transformer, which is slightly less massive. And you have a choke, which is relatively small. But all of these things are made out of very heavy pieces of metal. And that's why your tube amp is heavy.
Yeah. If it's a combo, you also have a giant speaker,
With a huge ass magnet. Yeah.
huge ass magnet. Yeah. So the tubes themselves are not
Very
where
light.
the weight is coming from.
No. Yeah, they are just light bulbs.
Very dim light bulbs.
Yeah. It's the transformers that make it heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Question 6. Oh, we might
I'm
get
not going
through.
to do hand signs anymore.
Oh, we might get through all 11 questions.
Ooh, this is exciting.
Yeah, and it won't be super late. Question 6.
6.
Whenever I try whenever I try tapping, the string will play above and below my finger, creating a really ugly sound. Um, what I believe the person is referring to are overtones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, technically when you tap a note, you are creating two notes. You're creating the note between your finger and the pickup, and you're creating another note between your finger, your tapped finger, and whatever is behind it, either another finger
Oh.
or the nut.
Well, they want to know, how do I stop that?
Oh, that's easy. If you watch, there's a tons of videos on YouTube where you see it looks like they have a scrunchie around the
Yeah.
the neck down
Yeah.
towards the
Fret wrap.
nut. Yeah, like a fret wrap. It's basically a mute functioning to cancel out those notes by muting them out,
Yep.
those extra notes.
Yep.
But if you don't want to do that, you could try moving your pickups away a little farther away from the strings. You could try lower output pickups. You could alter your left hand technique so that you don't leave a long distance between your tapped note and whatever's behind it on the string.
And their right hand technique matters too,
Yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely.
yeah, maybe you need to mute the other strings with your, I don't know, you could do a little muting with your right hand while you're tapping as well.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I would say in that regard, watch a bunch of Eddie Van Halen videos, watch a bunch of Vito Bratta videos. These guys were masters at tapping. Um, I can't think of his name right now, but the guy that was the lead guitar player for the band Autograph, uh, fantastic tapping player, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
What I would call traditional tapping.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, not like Michael Hedges tapping,
Oh,
which is a
Lord.
completely different art form.
Yeah. Okay. Question 7. Um, how do you decide between a large pick and a small pick? And my note here is, upon further questioning, they clarified they meant the shape, not the thickness. Although I'm saying
Thickness matters.
I think it's worth discussing all aspects. How do you decide between
Yeah.
a large pick and a small pick? And how do you decide between a thin pick and a thick pick? And
Well,
Wes, what's your thing here? Because I have my own
mm,
opinion.
yeah. Uh, I can tell you that I have over the years settled on this pick right here,
Wow.
the Herco Flex 75 nylon, made in USA. Um, I've been playing guitar for 40 years. I have used every pick you can possibly imagine. Big, small, round, triangular, funky, thick, felt. Um, and basically you just have to try a bunch of different picks.
Mhm.
I used to use for a long time, I used orange. No, wrong color. I used the green Tortex, which are fairly heavy, and I started breaking strings. So I naturally went to heavier strings and I continued to break strings. I play really hard. I like to say that I play my guitar like it owes me money. So I play that hard. Uh, and I didn't like the feel of the heavier strings. So I started going down in pick thickness.
Okay.
And I found a good balance with tens and the yellow Tortex picks. And I used that combination for a really long time until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And a friend of mine sent me a fat handful of these Herco picks. And I love the little grippy part at the top.
Hmm.
And they do wear better. You can, I don't know how detailed you can see, but mine are still worn. It is not a perfect tip
Oh
anymore.
Lord. Nope.
So I still grind them down, but it takes a lot longer for me to kill one of these than it did. I would go through, even with those yellow picks, I would go through 2 picks a set and just I would grind the tips off because of the force and the angle, because I don't hit the strings perfectly perpendicular. So I grind them down at an angle. But I like to have the pointed tip. So really the only thing you can do is try a whole bunch of different picks. Ask your friends, hey, can I have a pick? And just try using what they use. Some people like really thin picks that are flexible. I think those sound really. I keep some because I think those sound great with acoustic guitar. Um, I worked for a band for a long time where the one of the guitar players used the jazz size picks that looks like a tiny teardrop.
Yep.
And this was a heavy metal dude, and I never understood how he could use those picks. um I always had some of his picks in my pockets, so I would try them every now and then, and I'd get through and halfway through a song and get irritated. I couldn't use them.
Yeah.
I know Carlos Santana uses a giant triangle shaped pick. So it comes down to preference.
Hmm.
I even used for a while, I've got a V pick here, which is a little hard to see because it's clear,
Yep.
but it's super thick. It's maybe almost a quarter of an inch thick, maybe. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I
It's
can.
it's a it's a thick pick. Um, and even though they're really well made and they hold their shape and their corners very, very effectively, I never really got used to the thickness of it.
Hmm.
Um, but I like them, and it's a small business, and the guy does great work, and he has a lot of different offerings. So yeah, that's one of those things that's like strings. You just kind of have to try a bunch until you find the one that works best for you.
Hmm.
And you'll know it's the one that works best for you because you'll turn it around and those are the ones you're finding in the dryer and on the floor and in all of your guitar cases. And you'd be like, oh, well, maybe that's the pick that I use now.
Yep. It's picks and strings, a lot of trial and error. Um, I've I've found that I've settled on a variety of picks that suit different needs. So, like you mentioned, thinner picks for acoustic. I also like to use thinner picks for acoustic. Even though the strings are heavier, I like the sound that a thinner pick makes on acoustic
Yeah.
strings.
Yeah. It's got a
Um,
nice zingy sound to it.
yep. I do when I know, like, it doesn't happen often anymore, but when I know I'm going to be playing fast, a lot fast, whether it's rhythm or lead, I'll use teardrops. I do use those little thick teardrops. I really do like them, the Jazz threes. Um,
Yeah.
because they force me to use less of the tip of the pick. It's you're more floating over the string. But I had to do a lot of trial and error, and I do not these days. I don't like the traditional tortoiseshell. I like nylon picks. I also definitely like picks that have more of a grip to them because,
Yeah.
especially at gigs, I my hands sweat a lot and I will drop them all the time. So I do agree with you. Trial and error is the best way to go through it.
Yeah, I switched to the Tortex because I found I was breaking the traditional, plastic picks like the tortoiseshell ones. I was just even the heavies, I was snapping them. I was snapping the tips off.
Yeah,
So I needed something that was the nylon worked a lot better, and these plastic Hercos are. But I mean, even that I've only been using those for like I said, 3 or 4 or 5 years. So you may you may change the pick that you prefer over time as a player.
right. Yep. Um, okay. This next question is more of a statement.
Okay. Oh, I love statements.
But there was a question tied to it.
Okay.
Um, I am looking to buy an old historic guitar that is full of soul and stories. The best way to describe it would be a playable museum piece, but I don't want to spend a lot of money. That's it.
Uh so I don't want to say this person is deluded because I don't know who they are or what their life is like, but you cannot buy a vintage guitar without spending a lot of money. I mean, even what we might consider student models or things like that, like a Mustang from the 60s is going to be 8 or 10 thousand dollars because it's 50 years old, 60 years old.
Mhm.
Now, if this person means like a 20-year-old made in Mexico Telecaster, which depending on your definition of vintage, 20 years old could be vintage, then you can find those used all day long for not terribly much money. But if they're talking about a vintage guitar, which is what it sounds like, a classic vintage guitar,
Mhm.
they you have to rip off an old lady whose husband just died.
While you're grabbing her marble rye, also grab her vintage guitar from her.
Exactly. Good. That was a Seinfeld reference. I got
Sure
that.
was.
Uh
So
yeah, I mean,
someone linked this person to the Norman's Rare Guitars website, and when they were done choking on their ignorance, they were like, "Oh no, that's too much. I didn't want to spend that kind of money." Well, but you wanted vintage guitars. What are
yeah,
you looking to do? Steal them from someone? I mean, they are going to cost what the market bears.
yeah. I mean, here on Norman's site, there's a 1989 Fender Stratocaster. They want $1,500 for it.
Well, I mean, an 89 Strat, it's
That
89 is not a vintage guitar, is it? Oh God,
well, but think
it
about it
might,
though,
it
right?
might be.
It's 2024. That guitar
Yeah.
is 35 years old. Is it? Is it 35 or 45? So is vintage based on the age or is it based on the year? Right? Is a guitar that's 25 years old a vintage guitar, or is a guitar from 1963 a vintage guitar?
Okay, good question. I would tell you it's not the age that matters, it's the year, right? Because there's no mojo in an 89 Strat, but
Well, I
there,
mean, depends. If it's been played,
you know what I'm saying. It wasn't like
I
they were
do.
cranking them out,
Yeah,
like they
I
were in
know.
the 50s or 60s. It's a different
I know.
vibe. but you know what
I
I'm
would
saying.
agree with you that a early '90s American standard Strat to me does not qualify as a special guitar.
No, there's a billion of them out there still.
Yeah, exactly. Now, in another 50 years, will a 91 or 92 American Standard Strat be special? Well, let's wait and see what happens. I'm
Yeah.
hoping so, because then I can sell mine for a ton of money.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, question number 9.
Nine.
Um, Now the questioner asks,
Ooh, I got to
why?
tell you, man, there's some beautiful guitars on the Norman's website.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you
The
shouldn't have
questioner
gone there.
asks, I shouldn't have.
You shouldn't have. Are there any surf approved guitars?
I haven't seen any yet. Strats, that's about it.
Okay. Um, well, when you pick up your jaw off of the floor and you're ready for question 9, the
I'm
question
ready.
is, why are there so many custom shop guitars in the secondhand market? And my note is they didn't specifically indicate the Fender custom shop, but I believe that was the intent. Because
Yeah,
right
I
now
think,
there's a lot.
yeah, it does seem like it. And I've asked myself that question too, because I got my custom shop guitar used and it was, I don't know, maybe 40% off from the original list price. Not quite 50%, but it was a good deal. I certainly didn't cry at all.
I mean, I have some theories, but I would love to know your thought on the matter first, because
Well,
I could.
I think it comes down to people buying something that they want and then realizing they don't need it, or they are unable to continue to justify owning it by how much or how often or how well they play. So they start to get into a self-destructive cycle where they think they don't deserve such a nice guitar. And that leads to selling it. And I'm here to
So,
tell you, you deserve
yeah.
it. You deserve it. You absolutely deserve it.
I mean, the Fender Custom Shop opened in 1987.
Right.
Okay. So it's been a minute. And they've been churning out guitars for I mean, that's 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
close to 40 years. Um, why are there so many used ones now? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is I think there's just a lot of them to begin with.
Yeah. And it might be just a simple matter of oversaturating the market.
Right. And I also think
Because,
we're
well,
in, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I'll tell you why people sell them used because they can, because the wait times are so long. You and I both know guitar players are not the most patient people in the world. When we decide we want something, we want it, and we want it now.
Yeah, but you can, and that's true. And at the same time, you can get a Fender custom shop from places like Sweetwater now,
Yep,
not to
in
your
stock.
specs, right? Not to your specific specs, but close enough, maybe. Like they're actually carrying Fender custom shop instruments in retail
Raw,
spaces.
yeah,
Yeah, and like
yeah,
so the custom shop is actually making they're making guitars for the retail market.
for
So it's
stock, yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot of them out there. And the used market, I think, is so oversaturated for I think because of partly is partly the reason you suggested,
Yeah,
partly because there may be some retailers that aren't supposed to be selling them new,
that's possible.
so they're
But I'll
calling
tell
them
you what,
used.
I looked up Fender Custom Shop on the Sweetwater website, and they have 298 products available.
Yeah.
Now, are those all guitars? Well, I sorted the list from low price to high, and the first one that shows up is a Fender Custom Shop Telecaster for $3,600.
Yeah.
So, it's not just custom shop pickups.
No,
So yeah, Sweetwater has 300 Fender custom shop guitars that you can buy right now.
without a wait.
Yeah, without
Yeah.
waiting.
Yeah. So, I
So
think,
does that make them part of the problem?
I
They've
mean,
commodified the custom shop to a certain extent.
yeah, I think buying a Fender custom shop, I'm not going to say it's not what it used to be, but maybe it's just not what it used to be. All right, so I did say it.
Yeah,
And you know, I think we're also in a weird economic place right now, and people may be dumping their collection.
right. To pay bills I mean, I
Okay.
know. So I had two not Fender custom shop, but custom made Thorn guitars. Amazing, beautiful, tone-alicious. And I sold them both because I needed to buy a house.
Hmm.
That's what it came down to. They were literally the most valuable things I owned. And so I sold them because I wanted to get a down payment on a house because I didn't want to have a huge mortgage.
Hmm.
But I also sold a motorcycle and a bunch of other stuff. I sold amps, guitars, pedals. I sold a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But
And you
I
did what you
I
had to do.
sold my precious custom guitars, and that's just what it was.
Yep. So I don't know. I maybe I think now that the custom shop has been commoditized a little bit, and they're making so many guitars. I think now you're going to see the used market flooded with them,
Yeah,
like everything
but
else.
maybe that'll give them a little bit of an opportunity to slow down. And I don't know. I don't pretend to know how a business like that operates.
Right. It's very different.
My
If you're buying Fender custom shop guitars in the Sweetwater website, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
Aren't they just American Strats now?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, certainly cash is not a problem for you if you're doing that.
Yeah.
But
All right.
I mean,
Oh, keep going.
I don't know. It seems, I don't know, being able to buy one right off the website. I looked for a long time to find mine, you know,
Uh-huh.
and because I had a used one budget, it was even more difficult to find it. I felt like I really put a lot of effort into finding it. And so it kind of felt like I earned it a little bit. But if you have a really good job and you can afford to buy one off the rack and it meets your expectations, buy it, enjoy it, love it, play it.
Yeah. And you know what? The fact that there's a lot of them on the market right now, I mean, take advantage of that. Maybe now's your time to finally have a you know,
Yeah.
Fender custom shop made just for not you. Okay.
It does make me wonder how many of them they're selling on a regular basis that Sweetwater has 300 of them in stock.
I
So
mean,
they're either selling them hand over fist or there's an absolute glut and they're not selling anything.
yeah. Also, the place where I got my custom shop, one of mine, they had quite a few in stock. And they were
Yeah, and
just,
that wasn't not a Sweetwater.
no, it was just a small one location place in Western Pennsylvania, and they had like a couple dozen basses and
Yeah.
guitars custom shop. Okay. Question 10.
Next question.
What makes a Stratocaster in position 5 sounds so much different than, say, the Ibanez metal models. They look almost identical.
Position 5, is that all the way to the neck pickup or all the way to the bridge pickup?
Wes, does it even You're skipping the most important part of the question, which is a Stratocaster looks identical to the Ibanez metal model. And yes, it's position 5 because the metal ones sometimes have a single coil in the neck position.
Well, um, uh, I can't find a guitar called an Ibanez metal model.
Yeah,
So maybe they're talking about the RG, which
maybe.
is pretty metal. I don't
I don't
know.
know. There's more metal guitars than on Ibanez's website than the RG these days. I got news for you.
Does Ibanez have a true
Iron Label.
Strat?
Iron Label would be their metal guitars, I
Yeah. Oh,
suppose.
the Andy Timmons is a very stratty looking guitar.
Sure. And that does sound like a Strat in position 5,
Yeah, it
ish.
does. But I mean, so you're talking about the difference. There's a lot of differences. Um, Ibanez guitars are typically made from basswood, not alder or ash. Typically, it's not a given. Their necks are much thinner front to back. They're usually wider side to side. They tend to use humbucker pickups where Strats use single coils. They tend to use higher output pickups and floating bridges. So there's a lot of reasons why the two guitars would sound completely different. One of my one of my favorite things that any guitar maker has ever said was Paul Reed Smith himself, who said, when it comes to a guitar, everything affects everything. So if you have two identical looking guitars, but they're made out of different woods, they're going to sound different. They have different pickups, they're going to sound different. They have different neck thicknesses, they're going to sound different. Everything affects everything. I very much believe that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to come up with just one reason why they would sound different. There's probably 100.
Yep. Yeah. It has, and none of them have to do with the finish and what they look like. It's the
Yeah, what
components.
color they are. But
Yeah.
it could be the finish. A guitar painted with nitrocellulose lacquer in thin coats is going to sound a little bit different than a guitar using thick coats of polyurethane.
Mhm. Yep.
Excuse
Okay.
me.
My last question.
I can't believe I got through all 11 questions without anybody having to. Well, I guess we'll find out what the comments are later.
The last question is, why do new and expensive guitars need a setup?
That's actually a really interesting question. And I would, on the surface, I would say it's because everybody's expectations of how they expect a guitar to play are different.
Mhm.
So a perfect setup for you, like this is a great example, right? You use eights, you play a hum single single. I believe it has a compound fretboard radius.
Mhm.
I play a straight 9.5 radius. I use tens, and most of my guitars have three singles. I want and I'll set up a guitar a different way for a different purpose.
Mhm.
Like I have two very similar looking Strats, and one is set up so the bridge floats, and one is set up with the bridge decked. And like if I call Sweetwater and say, hey, I'm going to buy this guitar and I want you to deck the bridge for me. First of all, they're going to say, it'll be set up to factory specs and we'll send it to you. Thank you very much. Because setting a guitar up is work, and people that do work should get paid for it. Let's just hit that right now. So when you buy a new guitar, it's not set up, it's at factory specs,
Right.
right? It's made so that average people can play it in an average fashion with average happiness. And that's why you need to set up a brand new guitar, is because you want full value out of it. And that means the way you play has to be taken into account. I play really hard. I've said that a couple of times in this episode. So a guitar with low action is not set up for me.
Nope.
But if I handed you one of my guitars with high action and tens, you would not enjoy playing that guitar. If I sold you that guitar and it arrived like that in the mail, you would go, Jesus, this thing sucks. Because it's not set up for your style, for
You
your
don't
hands.
you don't have to use a hypothetical. You lent me a guitar and it showed up at my place, and I thought, holy crap.
How the hell does he play this thing?
Uh-huh. Do you remember what that guitar was? You do, don't you?
I want to say it was a Swamp Ash Special.
You would be correct, sir. It was a white, beautiful Swamp Ash Special.
Oh,
I was
that
thinking of
guitar was
buying
so
one,
beautiful.
and you lent it to me for quite some time. And when it showed up, it, in my opinion, needed work.
And I'll tell you what, man, I set it up as best as I could before I shipped it off.
Yeah.
But we play completely differently.
Yep. Yep. Um, and I would venture, so the person could be asking, why would an expensive guitar need a setup? To which your reply, because they didn't get a setup. What they got was set to factory specs, which is a very generic,
Exactly.
yeah, the very generic, it's good enough to get shipped so that once it's on the rack, someone can pull it down and go, okay, this is okay. However, there's also what I call the Guitar Center effect, which is an expensive guitar that has been sitting at Guitar Center for any extended period of time. And by that, I mean longer than a week.
Yeah.
Even an expensive one has been played, has been
Dries
abused,
out.
dried up. Yep. Um, and the longer it's there, the worse it gets. And there's a better than decent chance that no one is looking at or touching that guitar setup, despite all of the environmental, situations. It gets worse and worse and worse. So, but if you're talking like you're buying a brand new expensive guitar from Sweetwater, it shows up, you do the whole thing where you let it sit for a day in the case. And who does that, by the way? Very few people, but you do it. And then you open the case. I know you do. You open the case and you're like, oh, I don't like this, which does
Yeah.
happen. It's, sometimes all it takes is a fresh set of strings, even though the strings are fresh, but not your gauge. That's not the gauge you play. It's not the brand you play. It's not the same string material that you play. And,
Yeah.
maybe you just like your guitars with a little more or a little less string height or a little bit less relief or more relief. And next thing you know, that guitar is awesome. So,
Yeah. And I can give you a great example of this. I bought a new guitar not too long ago, brand new, shipped from uh, Sweetwater, and they do a check to make sure the guitar is at factory specs.
that's it.
So it showed up with nines, which I do not play,
Nope.
and so I played it for a couple days, and then I put tens on it. And I had to raise the action just a tiny bit. I had to adjust the neck just a tiny bit. After about 2 weeks, I noticed that the low E string was starting to buzz.
No.
So I looked at it. All the frets were where they were supposed to be. no problem with the nut. The action was exactly where I had left it, but the guitar had settled. It was, like I said, it was a brand new guitar. I was the first person to own it,
Hmm.
and I'd been playing it a lot, and it just settled. So what I did was I took it over to my bench. I made sure it was in tune. And this is a little trick I'm going to share with you and everybody else,
Ooh.
especially for Fender style bolt neck guitars.
Hmm.
After you've had them for a couple of weeks, or a couple of weeks after the season has changed and things have settled down into the new season, take that guitar, stand it upright on a supported surface, and loosen the neck bolts just a little bit, one at a time. Loosen it, tighten it, loosen it, tighten it, loosen it, tighten it, loosen it, tighten it. Sometimes you'll hear a little crack or a creak as the neck settles in.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean anything's wrong with your guitar, but this wood is thin and long. This wood is thick and wide. They expand and contract at different rates. So by cracking those screws loose just a little bit, you're letting the two pieces marry together more fully.
And do you do that with the strings on?
Uh, with the strings on and under full tension.
Wow, really?
Because yeah, you're not taking the bolt out. You're just loosening it a half a turn and then snugging it back up.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
And you're doing them one at a time. So
Okay.
the neck is it's still solid. Sometimes if when I first get a brand new guitar, I'll loosen all four bolts at the same time and kind of shove the neck down into the pocket a little bit, because shipping can do all sorts of small things.
Yeah. Okay. Cool tip. Thank you for that.
But
Well,
yeah, a little tech tip for you.
and with that, my friend, you've answered all questions. No,
Oh,
you won the episode. Tell them
I
what you
won.
won, folks. Oh, no, sorry, there's no way. So I guess what's left to do is but to tell everyone again that you can visit us at differentstringspodcast.com, email us your questions or topic ideas at differentstringspodcast@gmail.com, Facebook, Different Strings Podcast, YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, do all the things. Subscribe to our Guitar Adjacent podcast wherever you consume such media. And I know we're doing a music that matters, but I can't find your notes.
I didn't make any notes. In the spirit of this episode, I decided to go extemporaneously.
Ooh.
Yes,
And by
but
that
I
you
have some.
mean you're going to do it naked?
No, just off the cuff.
Oh, okay.
Very, very different concept. But before we go, I want to address something.
Uh-oh.
So I made a comment some time ago on a previous episode that angered one of our listeners. As a matter of fact, probably the one person we would consider a super fan.
Yeah, actually, you did you make what was the comment? No, maybe don't repeat it.
It I'm not going to repeat it. I'm not even going to tell you what it was about or what it
Okay.
involved,
Okay.
because that's not what's important.
Okay.
What I want to say is we are all entitled to our own opinions. Opinions are not facts. Opinions are not truth. Opinions are feelings.
Hmm.
And that includes what guitars we like, what strings we like, what music we like, what even individual albums by individual artists we might like or dislike.
Hmm.
Just because I dislike a band doesn't mean you can't love them. And
That's true.
it doesn't mean that I judge you, unless it's Milli Vanilli, I guess, unfavorably for liking that band. What I do not abide, however, is being treated like shit for my opinions. I'm not going to treat you poorly because of your opinions when it comes to music. I might wonder about why you like something,
Mhm.
and I might even pick on you, not y'all, because I don't know y'all well enough. But I occasionally will pick on Andie a little bit for her love of Dream Theater, which I don't always get.
Uh, you actually pick on me for my love of Telecasters.
Oh, that's because a Telecaster is a horrible instrument. A Telecaster isn't a guitar, it's an affront against humanity.
And my affinity for multi-channel amplifiers.
Uh, so what I'm saying here is you can have a different opinion than me or
Mhm.
Andie, and that's fine.
Yep.
What you can't do is treat me poorly because we disagree on something. That
Yeah.
I will not stand for.
Nope.
And when it comes to the podcast, that'll get you blocked. That'll get your comments deleted. All sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Now, what you do on your own social media feeds, that's fine. You can call me everything but redheaded. When you do something like that, it says more about you than it does about me. And more so than that, you're not changing my mind about whatever it is you're angry about.
No, you don't know Wes if you think that's going to work.
Yeah. And I just want to tell everybody that they're entitled to their opinion, and I want to hear it. If I say something, if you love Telecasters, comment below why you love Telecasters. I'd be happy to have a whole episode where we talk about why I don't like Telecasters.
You could fill a whole episode with why you don't like
I
Telecasters.
could, but it's not going to change anybody's mind.
No, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I typically just about any band I can find a couple of songs that I like. So usually when I say I don't like a band, it's just because I don't get into them, whatever it is they're doing. But
Mhm.
I probably like a couple of their songs.
Mhm.
Anyways, I just wanted to get that off my chest without mentioning any names, without repeating any comments, because, we had a situation where apparently a former fan decided to go scorched earth on social media and hammered it a lot longer than they probably should have. But that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
Their social media feed, their business.
Yeah, and I am of the mindset that um well, first of all, I am loyal to you, Wes. Um, I don't think you said anything offensive. You certainly didn't say anything personal. Um, and you didn't do anything but voice your opinion, and I will defend you to the ends of the earth. But and also at the same time, our intent by sharing opinion is never to uh, make an attack on anyone, let alone someone who enjoys listening to the show. So
Yeah.
if you're hearing our opinion as an attack on you personally, you probably should examine that a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You might be overthinking it just a little bit
yeah, because like
because,
Wes joked a little
yeah.
bit about making fun of me for liking Dream Theater, and it never at any point in time did I hear an insult or a personal attack. And
Yeah.
because that's just not how Wes is, and I happen to know him, but also he didn't say anything offensive. Anyway, not to belabor the point, but I think it was well said, and we encourage you to have difference of opinions. That's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
Spark a conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, with that, we say good night and bless your hearts.